The year is 2026, and the greatest danger to the modern man is stagnation. We have been conditioned to build our entire lives around fixed points, fixed bank accounts, fixed locations, and fixed digital identities that are all being tracked with lethal precision by the global grid. But Andrew here, and today we are unlocking the tactical archives of the Wild Goose, the legendary floating fortress of John Wayne. You see, the Duke didn't just love the ocean. He understood the mobile frequency of survival. He knew that when the cities become traps and the frontier is closed, a man's only hope is his ability to disappear and remain self-sufficient on his own terms. In this 57th chapter, we are decoding the Wild Goose Protocol, a masterclass in tactical mobility for the year 2026. While the masses are waiting in line for a digital permission slip to exist, the sovereign man is preparing his own means of extraction and endurance. This isn't just about a boat or a truck. It's about the mobile mindset. It's about being so prepared and so flexible that the system cannot find a fixed target to strike. The Duke spent his final years perfecting a vessel that could sustain his family for months away from the shore, away from the tax collectors, and away from the noise of a crumbling society. Doctor, record this. In the coming collapse, the man who is tied to the grid is a prisoner, but the man who carries his own perimeter is a ghost. We are learning how to become ghosts today. Analyze the strategic vulnerability of your life in 2026. Everything you rely on is centralized. Your food, your water, and your communication are all filtered through a single, narrow pipe that the elites can shut off with a flick of a switch. But John Wayne's Wild Goose was a study in redundant systems. He had his own power, his own supplies, and his own code of operation. He was a sovereign admiral in a world that was becoming increasingly regulated and restricted. He understood that freedom is measured by the distance you can put between yourself and a tyrant on short notice. In 2026, tactical extraction is not a fantasy, it is a necessity. The Duke's secret preparations weren't born from fear. They were born from a deep, historical understanding of how empires fail. He knew that when the center can no longer hold, the periphery becomes the only place where character can still breathe. We are building that periphery today. It is time to stop being a static asset of the state and start being a dynamic force of nature. The frontier is no longer a place on a map. It is the space you create between yourself and the machine. In the second layer of the Duke's survivalist code, we find the concept of logistical sovereignty. John Wayne was a master of supply lines. On his ship, every inch was utilized for survival. He understood that a man's independence is only as strong as his weakest link. In 2026, we have been tricked into just-in-time survival. We expect the shelves to be full and the lights to be on, but the Duke prepared for the just-in-case reality. His archives show a relentless obsession with resource hardening. He stocked his vessel with the essentials that never go out of style: fuel, medicine, tools, and the raw knowledge of how to use them. He knew that in a real crisis, a digital wallet is just a glowing piece of plastic, but a gallon of fresh water is a king's ransom. The Wild Goose Protocol for 2026 is about decoupling your supply. It means having the means to produce, store, and defend what you need to survive without a government handout. The machine wants you to be a dependent consumer, but the Duke's legacy calls you to be an independent producer. He saw the fragility of the modern supply chain decades ago. He saw a future where access would be used as a weapon to force compliance. By studying his meticulous preparations, we find the courage to build our own frontier reserve. This isn't about hoarding, it's about tactical readiness. It's about ensuring that your family's survival isn't a line item on someone else's budget. Doctor, look at the historical data. The men who survived the great collapses of the past were those who had their own water and their own walls. We are building those walls today, even if they have to be mobile. In the third layer of the Wild Goose Protocol, we must confront the most dangerous predator of 2026, total digital surveillance. The Duke understood the value of a private horizon. He used the ocean as a tactical shield, knowing that once you cross the 12-mile limit, the laws of the bureaucrats lose their grip and the laws of nature take over. In our modern era, they have tried to erase the horizon. They use satellites, signals, and sensors to ensure that there is nowhere left on this planet where a man can be truly alone with his thoughts and his God. But the Duke's strategy for 2026 is about creating your own signal darkness. He knew that true sovereignty requires the ability to go off the radar. He didn't carry a device that reported his location every 3 seconds. He carried a compass and a deep knowledge of the stars. We must apply this to our lives today. To be a sovereign individual in this century, you must learn the art of electronic camouflage. You must build a life that is not entirely transparent to the machine. The Duke's boat wasn't just a leisure craft, it was a statement of independence. It was his way of saying that he could not be contained, he could not be tracked, and he could not be predicted. While the masses are voluntary prisoners of their own smartphones, the sovereign man is looking for the dead zones in the grid where he can still exercise his free will. This is the ghost frequency. It is the ability to move through the world without leaving a digital footprint for the vultures to follow. Doctor, record this. The elite's greatest fear is the man they cannot see, the man they cannot quantify, and the man they cannot touch with a digital penalty. We are becoming that man by learning the Duke's silent tactics of the sea. Analyze the psychological freedom of being unreachable. In 2026, the system uses constant connectivity as a tether to keep you in a state of perpetual anxiety and reaction. They want you always on, always responsive, and always compliant. But John Wayne's mobile fortress provided him with this silence of the sovereign. When he was on the water, he was the law. He decided who entered his perimeter and who was excluded. He was not a subject. He was an authority. This is the mindset we must cultivate. You don't need a 100-foot yacht to achieve mobile sovereignty. You need the internal permission to disconnect. You need to realize that your time and your attention are your most valuable hard assets, and they are currently under heavy siege. By studying the Duke's deliberate withdrawal from the noise of the world, we find the courage to reclaim our own mental territory. We are building a fortress of the mind that is just as mobile and just as defensible as the Wild Goose. It is time to stop being a node in their network and start being the captain of your own destiny. The line in the sand has been replaced by the wake of a ship. It is moving, it is fluid, and it is impossible to cross once it's gone. The fourth protocol of the Wild Goose archives deals with this sovereign crew. John Wayne understood that no man is a fortress entirely on his own. A fortress requires a loyal, disciplined, and hardened crew. On his ship, every man had a role. Every man was vetted for his character, and every man knew that his survival depended on the man standing next to him. In 2026, the system has worked tirelessly to dissolve the bonds between us, to make us isolated targets that are easier to neutralize. But the Duke's strategy for the collapse is about micro-communities of grit. You need a crew that speaks your language of sovereignty. You need people who don't rely on the grid for their morality or their survival. The Wild Goose was a floating laboratory of human reliability. In a world of traitors and opportunists, the Duke built a circle of ironclad loyalty. He knew that when the storm hits the coast, the only thing that matters is the quality of the men on deck. For 2026, this means vetting your inner circle with extreme prejudice. Who can you trust when the bank accounts are frozen? Who can you rely on when the communication lines are cut? If you don't have an answer, you don't have a crew. You just have a group of acquaintances. The Duke's secret preparations included the cultivation of allies, men who shared his vision of a free and rugged life. This is social hardening. It is the process of building a network that functions outside the social credit system. Doctor, look at the historical records of the Great Migrations. The people who made it to the New World were those who moved in tight, cohesive units of mutual defense. We are forming those units today in the shadows of the 57th vault. Character is the only contract that matters when the world is on fire. We are bringing the 57th archive to a close with the ultimate realization of the Wild Goose Protocol. John Wayne's final years weren't spent in fear of the end. They were spent in the active pursuit of autonomy. Even as his health faded, his spirit remained tactically mobile. He knew that the most important thing he could leave behind wasn't the boat itself, but the will to be free in an age of growing enclosure. In the year 2026, the enclosures are almost complete. The digital fences are high, and the gates are closing. But for the man who understands the Duke's legacy, there is always an exit. There is always a way to slip the moorings and head for the open sea of the soul. This isn't just about surviving the collapse. It's about outlasting the illusion. The Duke knew that systems of control are inherently fragile because they are built on lies and debt, while the frontier spirit is inherently durable because it is built on truth and grit. This is Andrew, signing off from the deep, salt-sprayed vaults of the 57th Archive. The Wild Goose is calling you to move beyond the reach of the machine. The frequency of mobile sovereignty has been transmitted. Now, it is up to you to prepare your vessel, whether it is a ship, a ranch, or simply a heart that refuses to be tamed. Stay rugged, stay mobile, stay completely sovereign in a world of static slaves. We will see you on the open water, where the air is clear and the grid cannot follow. Godspeed, partner. The hunt for extraction is the only hunt that will save your lineage now. The mission continues through your courage to disappear and endure. Andrew out.